aflevering van Vechten met Moszkowicz. En vandaag wordt een hele bijzondere uitzending. And I'm gonna switch to English immediately because my guest James Fox right here is American. And we are gonna speak English with each other. And this is about now it's not even going to be an article. It started out as an article for our Dutch magazine Nieuwe Revue. And it's going to be all about UFO's, or the new word or the new term UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. And I think I have the perfect guest for our podcast today in cooperation with the Revue. And that is director of the iconic, now already iconic film Phenomenon. And if you haven't seen it, you have to see it. It's available on Apple TV. And James, did I miss something? Vimeo?
Oh yeah. So I tell people, I should have done this more, that if you get it from iTunes or Vimeo and you purchase it, you get 3 hours of bonus material for the same price. So
Boom.
It's no extra cost. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I missed out on that. So don't be an idiot like me. All right. So let's kick this off. I've purchased Phenomenon, like, I think when it just was out, maybe a couple of weeks or something. I am, an enthusiast, a nerd, whatever you want to call it. I have been following the developments since the Pentagon released the footage of the Nimitz from the fighter pilots, the FLIR camera footage. You see UAPs or UFOs for the people who are not still caught up with the new terms. You actually see them. These pilots, these American military men, have no idea what the hell they're looking at. They caught it on the FLIR cam. It's maneuvering in a way we cannot.
That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing! It's
as we know, this human technology is just not there yet. And they are just wondering what the hell that is.
Nickel 6-1 Tango Project, over. Oh, got it! Woohoo! Roger, there's troubleshooting as soon as I get... Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude.
James, can you maybe pick it up from there? Because your documentary starts way earlier than that. But, this is a very, amazing development in history of UFO. Because before that, I can say most Dutch people think it's like paranormal bullshit. But, you take it away, James.
Yeah, I know. So we were 4.5 years into making this film when that story broke on the front page of the New York Times. I mean, I just honestly had no idea the impact that was
we should say that the Pentagon released this footage through the New York Times, which is a quality newspaper.
Yeah. So basically what happened was, again, we were about 4.5 years into production. We were doing some pretty cool cases. I was covering cases for the first time that were close encounters of the third kind. And that's when witnesses report beings, creatures associated with the craft. And I had picked a couple of very credible cases, one in Africa, one in Socorro, New Mexico, with a police officer. Very credible cases, close encounters of the third kind. Right. And I said earlier, about 4.5 years into making the film, the front page of the New York Times reveals a secret Pentagon UFO program, and coupled with official evidence released from the cameras of the cockpit military jets.
Now, James, you were making this documentary way before they released that footage. What went through your mind when that broke in the New York Times? You must have freaked out.
Oh, it was... Nobody could believe it. I mean, could you imagine? In the middle of filming?
I knew this was breaking news for the front page of the New York Times.
My gosh. Look at that thing.
We need to accept that we are not alone in the universe.
The federal government, all these years, has covered up everything. It's very, very bad for our country.
There have been visitation, crashed craft, material recovered.
It was not anything from this earth. All I could do is keep a mouth shut.
The public has a right to know.
There's a tremendous resistance.
I guarantee every one of them knows that this event happened.
Hiding these dark secrets even from elected presidents.
They came running up here in such a panic. Child can't make that up.
Declassified government documents confirm ongoing UFO incursions at nuclear weapons sites.
Are you saying that there's some evidence that still hasn't seen the light of day?
I'm saying most of it hasn't seen the light of day.
These things are real. They're here. This is happening now.
So, well, for starters,
it's like finding oil.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, drilling, exactly. So for starters, we got more funding immediately,
right?
Because we had to go after. We had to include this revelation in our film, obviously, and we had to go after it. Added about 2 years of production time, because we had to go after the key targets. And I'll remind your audience that it wasn't just the fact that the New York Times was reporting on a secret UFO Pentagon program. But the director of the program, Lue Elizondo, had stepped down from his position to go public. The pilots that were piloting these craft at the time that they recorded these unknowns, they came forward. The person who started the program, who launched it, ATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, was former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. Harry Reid is the one that got Barack Obama to run for president. Senator Harry Reid is a household name in America. I mean, everybody knows who Senator Harry Reid is. Right. So it was a huge story, and still is. And everything changed from that moment moving forward, the likes of which the community, the UFO community, we've never seen.
Yeah. Well, this was... I can just explain a little bit how the Dutch audience or the Dutch people reacted to the release of that footage by the Pentagon through the New York Times. People are just they're kind of, how do you call it, numb or flabbergasted. They don't know what the hell to think. They're still not convinced. They still think this is going to be a hoax somewhere. Something is going to pop out of a head or something.
Well, let me remind your audience for a moment that I was working on a landing case that happened in 1964 in Socorro, New Mexico, where they were being seen associated with the craft. The witness was a police officer on duty. His name is Lonnie Zamora.
Yeah.
And he described this craft, and remember, this is back in 1964, as an egg. In 2004, off the coast of San Diego, the pilot, David Fravor, and all the other witnesses.
Right.
Remember, this was picked up on radar. This was seen visually. This was pursued and chased, and it was also photographed. They described it as a tic tac. Okay, so you've got this object performing maneuvers with displaying the technology that's light years advanced from anything that we have today. Certainly 50, 75 years ago, out of the question, with no wings, no tail, no visible means of propulsion, with the ability to hover, accelerate from a standstill to out of sight, literally in the blink of an eye. Yeah. I mean, they were picking it up on radar going at sea level to being at 80,000 feet in less than a second. It's just, it flew rings around those jets. I mean, it's made a mockery of our technology. But again, I remind your audience that I was covering a witness case of a similar object, but it was described as an egg, not a tic tac. I don't know if tic tacs existed in 1964, but in any case, this observed technology, these craft, it's nothing new.
Yeah. Well, of course, there's well documented. Of course, Roswell. That's where it starts, basically. The let's say, the popularity of the subject. James, let's talk about you a little bit. How did you get so involved in this subject? Is it something that started when you were young, or what happened?
Well, people often say, why is it that you do what you do? Why do you investigate UFOs? And I usually answer that question with a question, and that is, if it were true, and I ask your audience to suspend judgment and just imagine for a moment.
Not my audience, by the way. My audience, they're believers, but I mean the rest of
all.
Well,
yeah, right. Okay. Well, sure, but you might penetrate a much broader, more mainstream audience. You never know.
Yeah.
But to the skeptics out there, I say, look, if you could suspend judgment for a moment and imagine that there's credible evidence being suppressed that would indicate we're not alone, how significant of a story would you give that? And of course, everyone says, well, that would be the most amazing story in modern time.
Right.
And I say, well, I'm convinced it's happening. And so how do you walk away from a story like that? Right. I mean, it's kind of hard. And they say, oh, you're a believer. It's like, well, actually, you either know about it or you don't know about it. It's not a question of believing or not believing.
Yeah.
And so, it was a story I kind of got involved with in my 20s, and I thought, wow, this is intriguing. There seems to be something going on here, and of course, my family and close friends were all making fun of me, and my father was discouraging me from getting involved. Yeah, here I am, all these years later. 4.5 documentaries later, and a bunch of TV shows, and I feel. I feel that the topic is becoming more accepted with each passing day.
Yeah, well, I feel like that too. I think it's just something that's so outrageous for like a regular Joe to comprehend what's going on now. People are also very afraid of change, and this is going to change humankind. It's going to change everything as we know. This will change the faith of man. Also,
I remind you guys that the reality is the reality. You either know about it or you don't know about it. It's not gonna, you know what I mean?
Right.
We still have to go to work and make money and take the garbage out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. By the way, we're drinking beer. It's Friday night.
I love it. That's great.
All right. My favorite subject to talk about with a beer in the hand.
Yes.
So, James, okay, we can talk about something we have in common because a week ago I went to a very famous Dutch person. Her name is Tineke de Nooy. She had a show in the 90s about paranormal activities, and she took a plane to Zimbabwe, Lue, Zimbabwe, and talked to about 60 kids who were witnesses of a UAP appearing between the trees and two, as they describe it, alien-looking creatures about the height of a 10-year-old kid, communicating with them telepathically. Now,
when did she do that?
In 95, I think. It was a year after the event.
Wow! Did she film it?
I have the footage, dude.
Oh wow! What's her name again?
Tineke de Nooy.
You saw one UFO that's surrounded by little ones?
Yeah, one big one, one spaceship,
yeah.
Little ones around.
Yeah, let me see. Let me see your drawing. One big
one big ship and then small ones surrounding it with there were lights.
Yeah.
Surrounding the ship.
Like Sean's, huh? This is Sean's drawing.
Yes, yeah, basically.
Yeah. And okay, one landed, the big one landed, and the two aliens came out.
Yes.
Tineke de Nooy.
Yeah, it's Tyneke. That's her first name, and then.
Okay.
But actually, she said you approached her a while ago because she used some of her footage from YouTube, I think. Could that be, or is she full of BS?
I don't think so, because I licensed my footage from the John Mack Institute.
By the way, I've got a surprise for you because I'm allowed to send you this footage, and you got the approval.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Don't do what they were trying to tell us. They'll probably come back and trying to tell us again.
Yeah. Why do you all think these aliens came, especially here in Rua? Have you any idea? Who was scared? Not all of you, huh? Who was dreaming about it since then?
Yes.
In a bad way?
Bad way.
Yeah, in a bad way? No, tell me you first in a bad way. Why? You have nightmares about it?
Yes, I used to, but then after about a year, I stopped dreaming about it.
Mm-hmm.
I dreamt that the same one I saw without hair, he came into my bedroom and he took me from my bed.
Did you dream that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I just screamed. I woke up and screamed.
So, James, I got this footage from Tineke because, of course, I saw the phenomenon, and I just saw it online and blew my mind. I thought, there's a Dutch film crew. They went there. They talked to these kids. So I have about 30 minutes of interviews with her and these kids, you know, like real witness things. And it's high quality. It's without any logos. I'm going to send it to you.
I can't thank you enough. That's absolutely amazing. Seriously.
Well, you know, my pleasure, because what you're making is amazing. And if I can help in any way, I am. So.
Well, no, I really appreciate that. I really do. I mean, really, I can't wait to see it. I'm fascinated by that case, as you can tell.
Yeah. That's for sure. So let's talk a little bit about the phenomenon, because it's of course made on a real timeline. You try to explain when and where what happened. We in Holland have a very famous UFO case. I think you might know about it. It was the Soesterberg Army airport case. Have you ever heard about it?
What year?
79.
1979.
Yeah. Can I tell you about it?
Please do. I'm just trying to think if that was a hot year. I was thinking of the
I do think so.
Case.
Because in England,
go ahead.
In England at that time, which is pretty close here, it's just it's basically a neighboring country with a little bit of ocean. Yeah.
Yep.
So the Rendlesham Forest incident.
Very well.
Well, it was around that time. Well, it was a little bit later though. But this is full-blown Cold War, right? Mm-hmm. And the Americans secretly stashed some nukes in Holland, and they had a secret air base, which was shared with the Dutch military. So, about 13 Dutch military men saw a UAP above their heads the size of a football field, not making any noise, and it was exactly at the secret nuclear bases. But not just the military saw it, also like civilians who were in the area at the time. There's a very famous witness, Josie Swineberg, who was a girl riding her horse through the woods, and she actually chased that thing with the horse, and she still tells about it. Yeah. So this is one of, I think it might be top 10, incident in the world, because there were so many witnesses. These were military men. They did not know what that was. People later said, yeah, it was probably the B stealth bomber or something, but it was way too big. And I think stealths make noise.
And they don't hover.
And they don't hover. And they don't shoot like a bullet fired, Yeah.
There was triangular shaped UFOs about the size of a football field.
It was triangular.
Was it triangular? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was a police officer I almost interviewed. I spoke to him off the record, but I almost interviewed him for the phenomenon. Unfortunately, I just couldn't squeeze it all in. but he said that he was investigating reports of this massive triangular-shaped UFO that was hovering the size of a football field, and he got there, he saw it, he had his flashlight, and he shone his flashlight up at this thing, and it shot a beam of light directly down at his feet.
Right.
And he said, I wasn't sure if to interpret that as hostile or a warning or what, or just a communication. Like.
And now he's immortal.
Yeah. No, but that'd be quite an experience. Could you imagine out at night and it communicates back with you? I mean, it responded immediately, according to him.
Cool. Very cool. Well, the Soesterberg case, these military, they did see very bright lights. They said it was nighttime, but it was like you could read a book, that bright, like you were sitting in the sun or something. That bright.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So there is a radio documentary they made actually just a couple of months after the incident. They talked to the military men. It's in Dutch though, but maybe I can get it transcripted for you or something. But it's very interesting. It's very interesting because they're just utterly confused. They in 1979, the technology, it was just flabbergasting for these dudes. But this was probably the biggest case in Holland. And my friend, I have to name him because he's so excited I'm actually talking to you. Bram Rosa. He has a UFO website where you can actually, submit whenever you see something. Your films, your pictures, location, etc. It's called UFO meldpunt.nl. This guy is actually making a documentary on the Soesterberg case as we speak. He's doing it from his own savings. He's not gonna getting any funds, but he's doing an amazing job. He's talking to a lot of important people for that time.
Ik was kapitein van de Koninklijke Luchtmacht, de vliegbasis Soesterberg. Toen kwam er uit het onderzoek het verhaal dat het een luchtspiegeling, een bol glasachtig reflectie geweest moest zijn. Dat was de officiële verklaring. Mensen trokken het een beetje in het belachelijke. De meeste van dat peloton, wat toen die nacht dienst had, die zijn op basis van die reacties een beetje in zichzelf verkeerd geraakt. En die hebben er niet meer over gesproken. Maar ik bleef er ook toen mee zitten. 15 man kunnen zich niet vergissen. Kijk, we leefden toen in de tijd van de Koude Oorlog. Bepaalde gegevens werden al snel bestempeld als geheim, top secret, cosmic top secret, het hoogste geheimhoudingsniveau. Dus ja, er moet toch iets geweest zijn, is mijn conclusie, achteraf na al die jaren. Iets wat we niet konden verklaren. Er zitten losse eindjes aan.
They have a whole website about the Soesterberg case. Basically, that's made by Alex Griffioen. They're basically doing these websites together and investigating the cases together. They're going to be my guests next month.
Let me ask a quick question.
Sure.
Did the UFO interact at all with the nuclear weapons?
Oh, good question. That's a good question. Well, we saw a pattern. There were a couple of air bases in Holland where it was rumored there were nuclear weapons. Basically, they show up there. And I think this is a pattern that's worldwide.
Yeah, of course. But in some instances, they'll shut those weapons off.
Yeah, I talked to Robert Salas yesterday, actually. I did an interview with him. And he's in your film, of course.
Yes.
But that's an incredible story. Maybe you want to elaborate on that a little bit, because I'm curious. Have you heard anything more about the nukes and the UAPs?
Well, yeah. I wasn't going to cover that aspect of the phenomenon in the film. I just, quite honestly, it's not that I overlooked it. I don't think I realized the significance of it. I mean, it was a slow, sort of organic process for me when I was in the edit room and we were covering archival sightings in and around the area of Socorro, New Mexico.
Right.
And I'd gone to this archivist, this guy, David Marler's home in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he had one of the biggest archives of audio and newspaper clippings, headlines, probably anywhere in the world, I would think. And a friend of mine said, hey, let's, there's so many sightings in and around this area. Let's get out a map and let's take a look at the map, and we'll put pins in the map from these different events. And what we learned was that they were all within a certain proximity of Trinity Site. Trinity Site is the detonation of the first atomic bomb, back in 1945. Well, is it a coincidence that there was all this activity right around Trinity Site?
Well, yeah.
And
same in Holland, by the way. Yeah.
And we thought not. So anyway, fast forward, when I met with Senator Harry Reid, which was a big moment for me, because again, I've said this earlier, but he's a household name in America. I mean, he's really, he's a really well-known politician.
Right.
And I asked him what was one of the more astonishing aspects that he learned about the phenomenon, about UFOs, UAPs, during this 10-year investigation at the Pentagon. And he very quickly responded, the fact that they're not only seen over these super sensitive nuclear weapons facilities, but that in some instances they're shutting our weapons off.
Yeah.
So, at that moment right then and there, I realized I'm going to have to put a laser-like focus on this aspect, this particular aspect of the phenomenon. And so I contacted a gentleman named Robert Hastings, who is the most the senior authority on that aspect, on UFOs and nukes.
That's incredible. Yeah, I of course I saw the fragment where again Robert Salas was part of, the press conference.
Yep, at the National Press Club in Washington D.C. 2010. Yeah.
Well, I think that was so impressive because of your movie. Actually, I now I know about that press conference because I didn't know.
Yeah.
That like so many American military just spoke out, and they said, we were, they shutted us up. We weren't supposed to talk about these sightings, and but we see this all the time. And I was like, what the hell?
I know.
Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible, the testimony of the military men, because these guys, I mean, come on, these guys aren't messing around. They're in charge of the security and deployment of nuclear arsenal. I mean, these guys are the most highly trained, responsible, and, for them to report on what's going on with everything to lose and nothing to gain, they deserve to be heard. And then, of course, you've got Senator Harry Reid confirming at the highest level in history that this is going on. It's an absolutely fascinating aspect of the phenomenon. And that's why I was curious, the case with you guys in 1979, whether or not there was any actual interaction. Were they shooting beams of light down into the silos or anything like that?
Yeah, okay. So you wanted to know if there were lights.
Well, I would just be curious in that particular case, whether or not there was any, a lot of times they'll shoot beams of light down into the silos.
Right.
Well, there's reports of that happening. So I was just curious. There's got to be a reason why they were at the, I know to this day, the authorities don't acknowledge that there were nuclear weapons. They said the same thing in England. We know there were nuclear weapons there. We know that. They just can't confirm it 30, 40 years later.
Yeah, that's funny because one of the biggest Dutch newspapers in January got some proof there were nukes at that airbase. Still deny it. By the way, I did approach the Dutch armed forces for a statement.
Good.
And they gave it. Basically, I kept it very, broad. I said, okay, so if our armed forces, our military, if they spot something in the air, our pilots how do you classify that? How do you call it? And they say, well, if we see a UFO, we'll call it the UFO. But we don't see UFOs. This is basically their statement. I say, and what if you see something you can't explain? How do you call it? They say, oh, we just call it unknown. And I was like, how many unknowns do you see? And can I get a report? They see a lot of unknown.
People are reluctant to reach out like what you just did.
Yeah.
And I've contacted the White House.
Right.
I've reached out to different members, different witnesses, different politicians. And you'd be surprised that the vast majority of the time, if you take, the time and reach out to contact these people, 9 times out of 10, they will get back to you.
Actually, they have to by law in Holland, actually.
Oh, okay. Okay, great.
and we call it the WOB request. It's like a journalistic request, and they have to be transparent. But, they can send you anything they want.
Of course. Yeah. They'll send you to another agency.
We're going to go to a short break again. We will be right back with James Fox. And we can still talk, by the way.
Excellent.
So, yeah, this was funny. They did send me some reports, but no military reports. But what they do, they have like this military, I think it's like their main traffic tower, right? There's one for the military in Holland. It's called New Millingen. So whenever there's UFO sightings in Holland, kunnen we door? Yeah. Oh, we can continue now. I'm just gonna continue this story actually. We are back with James Fox, going to talk some more about UAPs. I was just explaining to him that whenever there is a UFO sighting, it usually goes from the police to the military traffic tower in New Millingen, which is a place in Holland, a small place, and they will check it out. Basically, there's always 2 F-16s ready to defend Dutch airbase any moment. So they're ready to take off in a couple of minutes. There's always 2 F-16s. So they will judge the call. They will check the radars, and send our F-16s. But they sent me no sightings by the military, but they did send me the calls that got into New Millingen. So they do want to disclose something to us. And they disclosed a lot before the year 2000 and just 2 cases after 2010. And, let's say maybe 5 are, pretty impressive. But I think they wanted me to see that. But there's a whole part between the year 2000 and 2010 I didn't get.
I went to the National Archives.
Right.
A number of times, but one time in particular, I went with the guy that wrote the book on one of the most well-documented close encounters of the third kind in U.S. history.
Right.
That's the case I talked about earlier, Socorro, New Mexico in 1964, with the police officer Lonnie Zamora.
Yeah.
And I contacted the guy that wrote the book on that case, this guy Ray Stanford. And I said, all enthusiastically, hey, I want to go to the National Archives and see what we can dig up. And he's like, whatever, was to be found has already been found. It's, wasted effort. And I said, well, with that kind of attitude, yeah, it's, So we kind of got into a little bit of an argument, but finally convinced him to go. And he said, look, I'll take my own car because after 10 minutes, I'm going home. I said, fine. So we drove 2 separate cars to the National Archives. And I won't bore your audience with the details, but eventually we got the top management addressing the issue of these microfilms. The things that we were looking for were not there.
Right.
And we knew that they were there because this guy investigated the case and he was on site within a week or less. So eventually they got the original archives and they brought them out to us. And so we got to go through the original, not microfilms, not copies, but all originals. And it was quite a moment. I feature a lot of that in the piece, but we did find, never before seen documentation of one of the best documented close encounters of a third kind in U.S. history. It was such a moment,
incredible
to go through the original, outlines of the landing site, of the documentation of the beans footprints were actually in the sand. To see all those diagrams written up by the military,
there's pictures.
It was unbelievable.
There's pictures. Is there pictures?
Well, photographs of the landing gear. They made reference. They had all these diagrams, and yes, there were some photographs. There were photographs of the landing gear, but there were 7 photographs that they referred to, but the envelope was empty. The photographs weren't in there. And then I came across some large negatives. They were large. I'd never seen negatives so big. And I was trying to scan them, but I couldn't. And I don't know. So to answer your question, we did not. We got the diagrams, drawings, and testimonies of the footprints of the beans that were definitely they were different. They were much smaller, and they were like pad-like. They were much smaller than human feet.
Right.
But anyway, just to see the original documentation from the military officer that was on the scene, of the footprints, of the landing gear, of the burnt bushes, of all of that was incredible. I mean, it's all right there.
Wow. Yeah, that is incredible. By the way, I've been meaning to ask anyone this question. Skinny Bob.
Oh, Skinny Bob, yeah.
What do you think?
I've had people bring that up to me, and
I have to explain because people don't know what Skinny Bob is.
Okay.
So, Dutch audience, there is a very mysterious YouTube channel by some guy named Ivan0135 something. And out of the blue, he released footage, amazing footage actually, of a alien, a moving alien, and it looks very real. And you have to imagine this was about 10 years ago, I think 2011. But the footage, no, he uploaded it in 2009. So a lot of people immediately think this is a hoax. It's CGI. But CGI people say, we cannot do this. And definitely not in 2009. And there's that's when Avatar came out and it kind of looks cartoonish. If you see this, I see a moving alien. So James, take it away. Your take on Skinny Bob.
Okay, so I had a gentleman that was just incessantly telling me I have to get a copy of Skinny Bob to the witnesses in Lue, Zimbabwe from the 1994 contact case, aerial school.
Yeah.
And so I said, sure, I'll pass it along. I'm always dubious of footage because, you attach yourself to any photograph or video, and then it turns out to be a hoax. It kind of discredits the whole effort, right?
Right.
But I'm always open. I try to keep my knee-jerk reactions. I have to look at something and review the evidence, right? I mean, I can't have my mind made up before I look at it. Yeah. So I said, sure, I will show that Skinny Bob video to some of the witnesses in Zimbabwe.
Right.
Hey, did the bean that you saw look at all like this? And they said, yes, it did.
Oh, you showed the Skinny Bob footage?
I did. Yes, I did.
Oh, man.
I showed it to them and I said, does this look anything like what you saw? And they said, yes, it does. Remarkably so. Yeah.
Wow.
So I have no idea. I mean, look, somebody should contact the guy, right?
Yeah, but
find out where it came from.
Look, I've tried to track this dude and he's just one big mystery.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what I would do.
No, look, he's very important. We should make a documentary about the skinny bob footage. Chase that shit.
Well, they did that. I met actually the guys. You probably don't remember. Well, maybe you do. Back in the 90s, there was a couple of guys, Robert Schofield and Ray Santilli, and they produced that Roswell alleged footage of the autopsy of one of the beings, right?
Right. Yeah.
So those guys, I don't know how long whatever it took them, they made millions on this footage that turned out to be based on a real story, based on real footage, but that the footage had dissolved, and my understanding is there's 5 or 6 seconds of real footage around stuff that they made up. It's quite a fascinating story, quite honestly. That whole story. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now, but,
yeah.
But suffice to say that they did a film that was just about that footage, that alleged autopsy footage.
Yeah. I gotta send you some stuff though, because I found some more.
Yeah.
I found some more autopsy stuff, especially from Russia.
Yeah.
Especially from Russia.
Yeah. Well, you know, you have to be very careful. There is a deliberate. There is fake stuff out there, and lots of it. You know, you have to be just very careful on what you attach yourself to.
Yeah, no, of course, but you know, there's things you can check and see. You know, if it's really fake, I can definitely see it. But you know, of course, I'm a film guy. You're a film guy. I know when it's, you know, special effects or CGI, or like, for example, the skinny bob thing. You know, I cannot see how that is not, you know, that must be a really amazing CGI, because especially in that time.
It's pretty impressive. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
But, you know, without knowing the origins and without knowing the photographer.
Yeah.
But, you know, somebody should go after that. No question about it.
We should pursue, yeah, definitely. And, you know, there's, of course, like a journalistic responsibility to, you know, really check the sources.
You know, it's surprising to me when you mention journalists that the mainstream media, with all the resources that they have not done a more exhaustive investigation into this. Like, why is it up to people like me and you and the other independent documentary filmmakers that are exposing this story? Like, why aren't they doing more work? Why?
Oh, my friend, this is coming in a very mainstream weekly magazine. So, you know, I am going to break this now. And I'm really, you know, I can't wait to get the responses on this, you know, because, you know, the Dutch particularly are very sober people. You know, they don't like, let's say, too much
hyperbole or sensationalism.
Yeah. So whenever you talk UAPs, they want evidence. Basically, they will believe it when the thing just spits in your mouth. You know, that's when the Dutch say, okay, this is real.
Yeah. You know, but it's funny actually, because I say to people, all right, let's just say that somebody has that experience where, you know, they have that unimpeachable encounter.
Yeah.
And then how are they going to share that encounter with other people? Because no one else is going to believe them. So.
Right. Yeah.
But with that mindset, you know what I mean? Like, well, people aren't to be trusted. You know. Anyway, that's one of the reasons why I focus on the more credible witnesses, credible accounts. Really, why I find the case in Africa so overwhelmingly credible is because of the sheer volume of eyewitness testimony.
Right.
In broad daylight.
So, James, let's talk about maybe one of the most interesting key witnesses, Captain David Fravor, right?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, tell me about what, you know, how was it meeting him and what he was telling?
I remember probably a little over 10 years ago, I was debating someone on Larry King Live, and it was an amateur astronomer, and it was a classic debunker, and he said things like, you know, pilots can't be trusted, they're not trained observers. And I just thought to myself, what is this guy talking about?
Yeah, that's full of
So
shit.
when I met with, oh, it's total bullshit.
Yeah.
So when I met with Fravor, and I've met with a number of pilots, but Fravor's an ace pilot, right? I mean, he
was a captain of a squadron.
Yeah. And you know, you listen to his, it wasn't like, hey, I just saw this UFO. He actually interacted with this thing and chased it and tried to intercept it.
I did not know that he actually interacted with it.
What we're looking at, and when the crew finds it, now what you're not seeing, you're seeing the targeting. When you hear him start talking, when you listen to the video, you'll hear the guy go, dude, look, they're all over. Look at the SA page. So we have a situational awareness page, and when whatever the radar is getting returns on, it'll show up. It's kind of like our God's eye view in the airplane. So the pod can only look at one thing. So he designates that as his primary target. So that's where the pod is staring. The radar is still seeing everything else. So what they're actually seeing in this video is when you see the object that he's tracking. When I was talking to one of the other pilots, he said there's actually, when you see the radar video, there's like it almost looks like a formation in front of him, like 5 smaller ones that are moving in front of it. And then they turn, so like a formation, these things turns and starts going the other way. And then while they're filming the gimbal video. And that's kind of the comms when you hear, dude, holy cow, look, they're all over.
This is unreported new information that he's actually saying right now. Everybody knows this video. This is the one that they say turns like the Lazar craft, like belly first. However, what he's telling you right now is something that is not public yet. He's telling you that there was a V formation of other objects that the public has yet to see.
You're not going to.
You're not going to.
It's a radar tape.
But
you're not going to.
There were more objects surrounding this, is what he's telling you right now, which is fascinating because the world doesn't know that yet.
What happened was, this is crazy, is that he was out on a training exercise.
Right.
And I guess he calls it his, I'm trying to remember the terminology that he uses for the guy in the back seat, Whizzle or something. Anyway, but he's got a guy
Ace
behind him. He's
Maverick.
got a guy behind him. Yeah, he says it in the film. But anyway, there's another pilot, and they're on a training exercise, and they suddenly, get word from the Nimitz, hey, we've got a real situation. We want you to go investigate. And they terminate their training exercise, and they've got this real mission where they fly out to these coordinates where there's something coming up on radar, and they want to go in and get a visual on it.
Yeah.
Well, they see something just below the water with an object just above the water, almost sort of either interacting with or connected to the craft below. They're thinking, wow, that's okay, that's interesting. And they're kind of in a holding pattern above it. And Dave says, hey, I'm gonna, tells his wingman, hey, you sit tight. I'm gonna go down and get a closer look. So he starts to spiral down towards this object.
Right.
Well, the object mimics his maneuver and starts to spiral up towards him.
So the cool thing with this is, when he goes into, so he's in IR mode right now. You're still seeing no plume. He's looking 47, so they're actually turning into it. So it's starting to pull it back towards the nose. See how the number at the top is decreasing. And it's against the wind. Now he's in TV mode, and this thing's going to just start to roll. And you can kind of see it's got that aura around it.
Mm-hmm.
He said they were saying that the ones with the squares inside that look like the beach ball were the same. And this thing's just hanging out. So it's on, the airplane's in a left-hand turn, and it's now it's right in front. Yeah, it's just rotating.
So this object that was at sea level is now coming up, mimicking his spiral, and it's going up and he's going down.
What a
He said it literally reacted to me like that fast. And he said the hair on the back of his neck stood up. What?
This thing was mocking him.
I know. Well, it was coming up and he was going down. And they were just doing this corkscrew maneuver towards each other. And then he said that he was going to cut him off at the pass and intercept him. And that's when this object did a maneuver. I mean, he was coming in on it. He was going to, he said that it just performed this level of acceleration that was impossible. I mean, it's just no craft could take off that fast. Yeah, and I don't know how many minutes the encounter was, but it was minutes. I mean, he got visual confirmation of this thing, and they did a little bit of a ballet, I guess.
Yeah, a little waltz, a little dance.
A little waltz. Exactly.
Which is incredible.
But anyway, you hear it from an individual like that, and it's coupled with radar, coupled with visual and multiple visual witnesses seeing the craft, and then they pick it up on their camera, right, and then document it on a flight, the very next flight. So that's, people say, oh well, there's just only anecdotal evidence the existence of UFOs or UAPs. That's some pretty solid evidence. I mean, they didn't catch the craft and then have it in their possession, but they documented it clearly.
Yeah. So
fascinating case.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to get back, but my friend Bram finally popped up.
Oh, good.
Oh, there he is. Hey, Bram, je bent live met James Fox. Kijk eens.
How are you, sir?
Met de Soesterberg case. Weet jij of er ook lichtstralen werden neergestraald naar de nucleaire silo's? Kun je dat in het Engels even aan hem vertellen?
About the UFO, the triangle, shooting a beam down to somewhere. Some people say that's true, and they say the beam was sent down to the print plates or something of the nuclear, I don't know, whatever. But there's no proof of that. So there's just one person that said that, and he was kind of security kind of guy at the Soesterberg Air Force Base. But he's dead now, so that's a pity. But the guy that interviewed him, Koen Vermeer, I believe his name is, told me that, but there's no real proof of that. So,
was he interviewed on camera, or was he interviewed? How was he interviewed?
Hoe was hij geïnterviewd?
I think he was interviewed just a couple of years ago, so just before he died.
But was it on camera or audio or what?
He was interviewed on camera, but the thing about the beam and the printing place was not on camera, so reason to believe any of it. So I can't confirm.
Okay. I was just curious because we covered that aspect of the phenomenon in my latest documentary, and thank you. The testimony from the military men of these things shooting beams down into the silos is startling.
Yeah.
Oké. Bram, James die was met name geïnteresseerd in het Soesterberg verhaal en to be continued, en ik ga jullie met elkaar in contact brengen. Ik spreek jou snel. Dankjewel. Hoi.
Dankjewel.
He is the biggest enthusiast in the country, I think.
Wow.
But he's like UFO Google, this guy. He knows everything.
Oh, that's great.
He owns the website. It's quite amazing. He's helping me a lot. So thank you, Bram and Alex, by the way. So these guys, they're making a documentary on Soesterberg. But the beam thing, he's going to be incredibly honest with you. And if that's the case, that's the case. There might have been one witness and he died.
Yeah.
So
there were a number of witnesses in my film that I was just super adamant about getting on camera because I was so terrified. The people are just dying off, right?
Yeah.
And the amount of people that died since then, that I got on camera, months before they died. Bob Friend, who was director of Project Blue Book, William T. Coleman. These people are dying off, and it's like important to get their testimony, in the history books.
Yeah, I was wondering, Lue Elizondo.
Yes.
He's very important, and we haven't mentioned him a lot.
No, I know he is an amazing guy.
He's an amazing guy. But he was running AATIP, which is very important. That was for the government, right? That was investigating UAPs.
Yes.
The military.
The former National Intelligence Director is revealing a new government report on UFOs will be full of never before seen or heard intel.
Frankly, there are a lot more sightings than have been made public. We're talking about objects that, frankly, engage in actions that are difficult to explain, that movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have the technology for.
Okay, joining us right now to discuss is Lue Elizondo. He is the former director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, a Pentagon unit that studies UFOs. Lue, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So part of the evidence apparently is going to show UFOs or some, they're just unidentified objects, breaking the sound barrier without a sonic boom. How is that possible?
Well, I think that's probably the crux of the problem, that we are seeing these, let's call them vehicles, if you will, that are incurring into controlled U.S. airspace, that are displaying performance characteristics that are frankly well beyond anything that we can either replicate or in some cases really even under.
Interesting stuff.
Sure, my pleasure.
The American military, without us knowing, have been investigating, of course, this for years. Now we know.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to investigate anything that flies in the airspace. They can't just, you don't have unknowns in the airspace and not investigate. So
right.
They've been investigating UAPs or UFOs always.
I know.
We're just finding out about some of these investigations, right?
Yeah. What do you think about this ultimatum? You know, we are, I think you and me are waiting for in June. You know, when they have to, share the files.
Believe it or not, and I can't go into great detail, but I am putting a laser-like focus on that effort in the very near future. I'm actually one of the reasons why I looked down at my phone a moment earlier is because I'm getting in touch with a publicist about that specific endeavor, because I think it's an unprecedented opportunity. You know, what is actually ultimately revealed, Joe Public, you and me, might have the ability to influence the overall outcome of that assessment.
Right.
But you know,
let's elaborate a little bit for the viewers,
Sure.
if you don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah. Do you want me to tell
So maybe you can explain it to
Sure.
the viewer.
So when then President Trump signed into law this COVID relief bill, there was I would say directive or provision within the 5,000 plus page report or document that the intelligence agencies had 180 days to produce a public assessment of UAPs to Congress, ultimately public, that could be presented to. Basically, what's going on? What do we know?
Yeah, this is incredible.
And that's never happened before, ever.
Oh.
And a lot of people don't even know about it. I mean, yes, it's gotten some news coverage, not anywhere near what it deserves.
No.
So, you know, we're considering doing a little campaign to raise the level of public awareness and to get people to contact their representatives and let them know that we're paying attention.
Yeah, in my way, I'm doing that because of, of course, the magazine, the UAP edition, and the podcasts like this. But I can't believe that how do you say this in English? Apathic. Yeah, the people are just
apathetic or
apathetic. Yeah, the
yeah.
people are towards
You know, people. It's a luxury. Honestly, to have I mean, most people are just trying to keep afloat, right? Just trying to put food on the table, and these are really tough times for people right now. A lot of people are really struggling, you know, but this is potentially a huge story, something that could touch the lives of every man, woman, and child.
I think the story.
Yeah, it's the story, and there are people working diligently both in front and behind the scenes to get this story out. But they need, you know, everyone, you know, they need support. The people that are pulling strings need to hear from the general public that the demand is there, the interest is there, the support is there for, you know, for more of this stuff to come out.
Definitely. And
I mean, look, one of the things that Senator Harry Reid was a bombshell moment for me in the film was when he confirmed what many of us in the field have felt for decades, and that is that the evidence that's been released is just the tip of the iceberg as to what's there.
Exactly.
You know, and to hear that coming from Senator Reid is a big deal. So let's go after that evidence. We've identified it. We know it's there. Let's get it released to the public.
Okay, so last thing. Let's go back to Zimbabwe, because I think this is, and you probably agree, the most amazing case there is, because of all of the witnesses, the kids who witnessed and talked with telepathically with beings, and decades later tell the exact same story. And even a psychiater, Harvard professor investigated. John Mack it was?
Yeah. Yep.
Well,
Harvard psychiatrist John Mack.
So why is this case especially captivating you so much, James?
I would say that I didn't believe it when I first heard about this landing and contact case that occurred in Africa, Lue, Zimbabwe in 1994, because my philosophy was, my reasoning was that you can't have a mass sighting in broad daylight where you have nearly 100 witnesses and the whole world not hear about it. To me, it's just not, you know what I mean? So I just brushed that case aside. What I've learned, and I've learned this time and time again, is that I'm a skeptic myself, right. Is that I can't prejudge a case or a witness or an incident without at least suspending judgment and reviewing the evidence. I've learned that time and time again because, it's so easy to say, jump to conclusions and say, oh, there's no way something like that could happen because, come on, man, broad daylight, come on, like,
Right.
And, but I started looking into that case after 10 years. I heard about it 10 years before I looked into it. I'd heard about it and I wrote it off immediately. Yeah. And then I started looking at the test. I started listening to the tapes of the children that were interviewed at the school by Dr. John Mack from Harvard, who flew with a camera crew to Africa within a week or so after it happened and documented, I think it was 66 kids, something like that, on camera. And there were about 100 in the playground at the time. And boy, I was so moved by the testimony of the children, just profoundly moved by it. And so the more I looked into that case, and then of course getting a hold of the witnesses with the help of Randall Nickerson, finding them 20 years later, flying them out from all different corners of the world, bringing them together, having them draw, talk about their sighting. First time they'd all been together in 20 years, and then go to Africa, go to the landing site, talk to the headmistress, Judy Bates, who was then a teacher. That's a slam dunk case. I think it's the most well-documented close encounter of the third kind in the history of the phenomenon in the world. Yeah. Just because of just the sheer volume of witnesses. And I have to remind your audience, and I'm sure a lot of you know this already, but that there were witnesses in South Africa that saw this craft over a several-day period. It was even photographed, videotaped back in '94.
This is actually very important. It's not like mass hysteria. These kids, just made something up.
The UFOs chose the school to land, but they'd been flying in and around the area for several days prior to that landing case. And I find it very interesting when you start looking into school landings, because actually there's quite a few.
True.
And quite a few very credible ones.
There must be a reason these beings want to talk to children. Maybe because they're just... We try to shoot at them, so, Yeah.
Military does, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Anything unidentified in the airspace, we take a pretty hostile position towards. Children don't do that.
I know for a fact the Finnish and the Americans shot at him. So.
Yeah, that's what we do. Yeah, unfortunately that's what we do.
Hey, I gotta round this up now.
Okay.
We have for over an hour. I could talk to you for 2-3 more hours. By the way, maybe you should do it to be continued. James, is there anything you want to plug? Is there anything new coming?
Yeah, so, if anyone wants to learn about the film, look at the trailer or find links to rent it or purchase it or read about it or get a t-shirt or anything like that, you can go to the phenomenonfilm.com, thephenomenonfilm.com.
I'll put it in the...
If you want to rent the movie, just find the cheapest place, which is probably Amazon for a couple bucks. But if you want to buy it, I would highly recommend getting it from Vimeo or iTunes because it comes with 3 hours of bonus material for no extra cost. And I also have a call to action on the site for if people that want to not spend any money, but just contact their representatives for those of you that are listening possibly in America. Yeah. To let them know that we're paying attention and we'd like further transparency on this topic.
Okay, so if people are interested in more, is there a website or a social media where we can check you out?
My website's thephenomenonfilm.com,
Right.
And then, my presence on social media, I think it's James Fox, I think on Instagram and Twitter. I got people helping me manage those accounts, but I mean, you could find me on Instagram and Twitter. And,
I found you on Instagram, so.
You did? Okay, cool. Yeah. So yeah, I do have a presence there.
Yeah.
I can't manage all of it just because it's kind of chaotic when you first put a movie out. There's a lot of and so I can't, I try to keep up with it. I try to get back to everybody. I really do, but sometimes it's a little overwhelming, especially if I do a big appearance,
Right.
It kind of goes like this. Sorry?
Well, I'm actually very, very happy you made some time for me. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. I feel that if someone's going to take the time to contact me and the least I can do is take the time to respond. Sometimes it's not possible to get back to everybody, but I do try.
I just stalked you,
Yeah. Hey, it excites me that that younger people are interested in the phenomenon, and that people are making movies, and I'm encouraged by that very much.
Well, of course, this podcast is a part of the huge edition we're gonna release in a couple of weeks in the Nieuwe Revue, where people can read all the stories also about Zimbabwe, about your film, Jeremy Corbell's story with the Bob Lazar thing.
Yep.
I want to know what you think about him, by the way. But much more. Skinny Bob. Where we're going to cover basically anything, and I really want to do a follow-up in June because that's a good time to do a follow-up.
Somebody should contact the guy that posted the video and find out where he got it from. That would be really important to follow up on that.
Ivan, you mean the Skinny Bob guy?
Yes.
Right. I want to talk to you about that. We should make a film about that. Okay, so James, thank you very much. It's going to be so. This is going to be on the YouTube channel. It's going to be on Good Life Radio, and of course, it's going to be also a written interview in the Nieuwe Revue with the UAP edition. Sir, thank you so much. I'm a big fan.
Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Everyone, check out The Phenomenon. It's incredible. You should see it. It's going to change history. All right, James. Let's exchange contacts anytime soon, and we'll talk.
Excellent. Thanks for having me on.
All right, man. Thank you. Bye bye. Dit was Vechten met Moszkowicz, James Fox.
There are cases that are not explainable in conventional terms.
That have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things.
When we got right up to it, it lit up. Was this a warning? Was this an attempt to communicate?
Felt scared. I was running and playing, and then I saw this maroon color in the sky.
It was not anything from this earth.
He was looking at all of us. Maybe they're trying to communicate.
They were reaching out to us.
There is an immense array of unanswered questions and an urgent need to get to the bottom of it.
The public has a right to know.
My gosh, look at this thing.
The question is no longer if they are here, but why.
What are they doing? What do they want from us? What are their motivations?
For over 75 years, there have been sightings in the sky.
The UFO shut down several missile silos in Montana.
Thousands of witnesses worldwide.
It had to be a data collection. I'm sure they scanned the warhead.
Just kind of hovering there. It never changed its longitudinal axis. And then it goes poof, and it takes off the side.
And high-level cover-ups.
The government was covering up what happened at Roswell.
Hiding these dark secrets.
I was told there wasn't anything there when I knew there was.
People need to know there is something else out there.
Yes, there had been visitation, crashed craft, material recovered.
Shouldn't we be spending some money to study all these phenomena?
I knew this was breaking news for the front page of the New York Times.
They were trying to communicate, trying to tell us something?
Now it's time to tell people about it.
These things are real. They're here. This is happening now.